Welcome on board, chosen one. Let's not pretend anymore. Let's not soften it. Let's not act polite so fragile egos can sleep at night. This starts with a fact: they hate hearing out loud. They misjudged you completely. They said you were harmless. They said you were slow. They said you didn't see what was happening. They said, "Look at him, he's confused." They said, "Oh, the legend needs to bow now." They said you'd fold the moment pressure showed up. They said you were lucky, accidental, overrated, temporary. And now, look who's quiet. Now look who avoids eye contact. Now look who suddenly always believed in you. Now look who can't explain how the whole board flipped without a single loud move. This isn't imagination. This is aftermath. You're standing in that strange silence after a storm where nothing is flying anymore, but everything is changed. Conversations stop when you enter rooms. Messages get rewritten before being sent. Enemies smile too hard. Allies hesitate before speaking. The atmosphere shifted and nobody announced it. They felt it. They don't say it out loud, but the question is eating them alive. How long have you been playing us? You stood there with that innocent face, that flawless mask, calm, quiet, unthreatening, while orchestrating one of the cleanest, most precise checkmates they've ever been trapped inside. No yelling, no explaining, no dramatic exits. They thought they had you figured out. They thought they cracked your code, thought they decoded your patterns and mapped your limits. They watched your reactions like scientists. They saved screenshots of your weak moments. They replayed your worst days and called it data. They celebrated every crack they thought they found in your armor. And the whole time, that smile you wore wasn't submission. It was amusement. They were analyzing a ghost, while the real you was moving pieces on a board they couldn't even see. And right here, chosen one, if this message is already hitting too close to home, tap the like button and subscribe. Not for the algorithm. Do it as a signal, a way of paying this message back and strengthening the voice that refuses to lie anymore. Because what comes next is the part nobody warned them about. See, they thought your silence meant confusion. They thought your patience was fear. They thought your distance was weakness. They never considered discipline. They never considered restraint. They never imagined someone letting the universe expose everything for them instead of rushing the reveal. You didn't leak your identity by accident. It slipped out because the pressure cracked their structure, not yours. Someone talked. Someone underestimated the weight of what they knew. Someone couldn't keep pretending they were in control. And suddenly, pieces of you appeared in places they shouldn't have. Stories didn't line up. Old narratives broke. The math stopped working. That's when panic started. That's when they realized this wasn't luck. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't you growing fast. This was preparation they never noticed because they were too busy watching the wrong version of you. Think back. There was a time you were laughed at for being quiet, a time you were dismissed for not reacting, a time when people mistook your self-control for lack of confidence. They don't remember how many nights you rebuilt yourself without witnesses. They don't remember how often you lost and learned instead of complained. They just remember the moment everything flipped and they weren't ready. History always looks obvious after the reveal. Every great reversal does. The strongest characters are never loud at the beginning. They are underestimated on purpose. They survive by letting others tell stories that feel safe. Then one day, a single move exposes the truth, and suddenly the room understands they were never watching the real game. That's the moment you're in right now. The victory isn't loud yet. It's not fireworks and applause. It's subtle. It's in the way they hesitate before crossing you, in the way excuses replace insults, in the way your name now carries weight without explanation. You're not here to prove anything anymore. You already did. And the most unsettling part for them is this. You're not angry. You're not gloating. You're not chasing revenge. You're calm, centered, focused, like someone who already won and doesn't need permission to move forward. That's villain energy turned wisdom. That's power with control. That's a checkmate delivered without touching the king. They asked, "How long have you been playing us?" The answer is simple and terrifying. Long enough to understand the board better than anyone else in the room. Now pause right here. Not because the story is slowing down, but because this is the moment where the line gets drawn. Up to now, you've been listening. From this point on, you're stepping inside the mind behind the checkmate. This isn't background noise content. This is the kind of breakdown that makes people uncomfortable because it explains too much. So if something in you feels locked in, if your focus just sharpened instead of drifting, that's not hype. That's recognition. Chosen one, if you're really built for this, you already know walking away halfway is not an option. The ones who leave early are the same ones who never see the full board. But the ones who stay, they start noticing patterns. They start understanding why the leak wasn't a mistake, why the mask slipped on purpose, and why silence was the loudest move you could make. This is where the game stops being emotional and starts being strategic. So do one thing before we move forward. Drop a comment with 777, not as a ritual, not as superstition, as a signal, a marker that you're still here, still watching, still ready to see how the universe exposes players who think too small. Because from here on out, we're breaking it down step by step. And if you're truly who this message is meant for, you'll feel the pull to stay until the very last move is revealed. Now, let's get into it. Number 1. They thought they were hunting you. Turns out they were walking into a trap you designed. The funniest part about fake hunters is how confident they feel right before they realize they were never in control. They really believed they were smart. That's the part that hurts them the most now. Group chats buzzing like underground war rooms, screenshots flying back and forth, late-night voice notes dissecting your tone, your timing, your silence. They spoke your name like a puzzle that deserved to be solved, like you were some mystery put on this earth for their entertainment, their curiosity, their egos. They told themselves they were investigators. They told themselves they were closing in. They told themselves, just one more detail and we've got them. And that belief gave them confidence. Confidence turned into arrogance. Arrogance turned into recklessness. That's always how it goes. What they never understood, and what's probably keeping them awake right now, is this simple truth. They weren't hunting you. They were being led. Every rumor they chased made them feel superior. Every half-truth they uncovered made them feel validated. They congratulated each other over crumbs and called it a feast. They mistook proximity for control, access for power, noise for progress. Meanwhile, you were calm, silent, watching. You weren't hiding, you were curating. Chosen one, let this land slowly. Ask yourself the question they still can't answer without panicking. If they were really so smart, why did everything they discovered lead them exactly where you wanted them to look? They think now that they were close. They weren't close. They were contained. This is the part where the enemy gets uncomfortable because it reframes everything. It means their effort wasn't heroic, it wasn't impressive, it was predictable. They didn't crack your code. They followed a decoy version of you that existed for one reason only, to keep them busy while the real game moved forward unseen. You've seen this pattern before in history, even if nobody explained it like this. The strongest players never disappear completely. They leave just enough signal to attract attention, just enough noise to create confidence, just enough visibility to make watchers think they're ahead. That's how traps work. A trap doesn't look like danger. It looks like opportunity. They thought your pauses were mistakes. They thought your restraint meant hesitation. They thought your silence meant you didn't know what to do next. That assumption gave them courage. Courage made them sloppy. Sloppy people talk. Sloppy people leak. Sloppy people expose themselves without realizing it. And that's when the universe does what it always does. It amplifies imbalance. One message shared with the wrong tone, one screenshot taken out of context, one person bragging a little too loudly about figuring you out. That's how identities leak, not because you slip, but because pressure reveals who can't carry weight. You probably felt it when it happened, that subtle shift, the way conversations suddenly felt tense, the way certain people went quiet, the way others over-explained. The leak didn't expose you, it exposed them. This is where chosen ones usually doubt themselves. You might be thinking, did I mess up? Did I reveal too much? Did I miscalculate? No. If you had truly misplayed, there would be chaos around you. Instead, the chaos showed up around them. That's how you know the checkmate was calculated. They're replaying moments now, rereading old messages, reanalyzing situations they once laughed about. The confidence they had during the hunt has turned into confusion, confusion into fear, fear into silence. Because the worst realization for an enemy isn't that they lost, it's that they were never competing on the same level. You weren't reacting to them. You were observing how they react when they think they're winning. That's advanced positioning. That's patience most people don't have, because it requires ego death before victory. They wanted control. You wanted clarity. They wanted exposure. You wanted leverage. They wanted answers fast. You wanted the right timing. That's the difference between people who chase power and people who become it. Now, the question haunting them isn't, who are you? It's, how long have you been playing us? Because every so-called clue now looks staged. Every aha moment feels embarrassing in hindsight. They're starting to see that the trail didn't lead to your weakness. It led to their overconfidence. And here's the part that should light something fierce inside you, chosen one. You didn't win by overpowering them. You won by letting them underestimate you long enough to defeat themselves. That's why this victory feels quiet. That's why it feels heavy instead of loud. Loud winds fade. Quiet winds echo. You're standing in the aftermath of a psychological collapse you didn't even have to announce. They built the story, they spread it, they chased it, and now they're stuck explaining why the ending doesn't make sense. This is the moment where chosen ones usually feel a strange mix of relief and sadness. Relief because the truth is out. Sadness because you realize how many people never saw you, only the version that made them comfortable. Let that go. You're not here to be understood by people who only see value in control. You're here to move forward with precision, not noise. They thought they were hunting you. They thought they were clever. They thought the game was theirs. And now they're staring at an empty board, realizing the only real move that mattered was already made. That's not luck. That's not accident. That's mastery. And from here on out, the universe doesn't ask you to explain anything. It simply clears the path and watches who dares to step into it. Number 2. The mask you wore became their prison. They called it reality. The most dangerous performance is the one so believable that the audience forgets it's watching a play. This is where their confusion turns into humiliation, because once the dust settles, once the leaks stop spreading and the noise dies down, they're forced to face a brutal truth they never prepared for. What they thought was reality was a performance, and not a sloppy one, not an emotional accident, a controlled, deliberate, perfectly paced act. Every reaction you showed had a reason. Every pause was intentional. Every moment of vulnerability was measured, not impulsive. They thought they were watching you unravel. They thought they were catching glimpses of the real you slipping through the cracks. They whispered, "There it is." That's the weakness. They circled those moments like predators, convinced they'd found blood in the water. They didn't understand something simple but devastating. Cracks can be architectural. Imagine this. A magician stands in front of a crowd and tells them exactly where to look. The crowd stares, confident they won't be fooled. And yet the trick still works because the magician already decided what obvious would look like. That's what you did. You let them stare directly at what you wanted them to see. They mistook access for insight. They mistook proximity for power. They mistook your humanity for lack of control. And that mistake cost them everything. People who don't understand strategy always assume emotion means weakness. Chosen one, you probably wondered at some point if you were overdoing it, if showing emotion made you look exposed, if letting them see you struggle gave them leverage. That doubt didn't come from intuition. It came from conditioning, from a world that teaches you to either hide everything or overshare without purpose. You did neither. You performed. And performance, when done correctly, isn't deception. It's direction. Every tear they saw convinced them they were ahead. Every moment of frustration you allowed them to witness reassured them that you were human, manageable, predictable. They wrote notes. They made charts. They compared timestamps and tones like amateurs, trying to reverse engineer a masterpiece with a ruler and a flashlight. They thought observation meant control. But observation without understanding is just voyeurism with an ego. They were so busy documenting you that they forgot to ask why nothing they uncovered ever gave them advantage. They knew your reactions, but they never knew your intentions. They tracked your behavior, but they never grasped your positioning. Imagine a chess player who memorizes how a grandmaster moves their pieces without understanding why. They'll feel confident right up until the board collapses under them. That's exactly what happened here. They didn't lose because they lacked information. They lost because they misunderstood the information they had. You weren't leaking emotions. You were testing perception. You weren't revealing weakness. You were studying what people do when they think they've found one. This is where the chosen ones usually ask the quiet question they're afraid to say out loud. Was it manipulative? No. It was adaptive. You learned early that honesty without strategy gets exploited. You learned that raw truth in a predatory environment isn't bravery, it's bait. So you evolved. You learned to speak without giving away the ending. You learned to show enough to satisfy curiosity, but never enough to give control. They called it transparency. You called it containment. Imagine this: a glass wall. From one side, it looks like open space. From the other, it's a barrier no one sees until they collide with it. That's how your performance worked. They thought they were walking freely through your inner world. They didn't realize every step was being guided. And here's the part they still can't digest. You didn't perform out of fear. You performed out of awareness. Fear reacts. Awareness anticipates. They thought you were spiraling when you went quiet. They thought you were breaking when you stepped back. They thought your pauses were emotional fatigue. They never considered composure. A calm face in chaos terrifies people who need disorder to feel powerful. They applauded themselves the entire time, congratulated each other for seeing through you, mocked your moments of openness as proof they were right. They built an identity around being smarter than you, more perceptive than you, more prepared than you. That identity is now shattered, because when the universe shifted and the mask slipped just enough, they saw it, not the weakness they expected, the structure, the consistency, the intentionality. That's when applause turned into silence. They realized they were never directing the story. They were consuming it, commenting on it, reacting to it, while you were shaping outcomes. They were the audience, not the directors. And the greatest insult to an enemy isn't defeat, it's irrelevance. Imagine this. A movie critic writes a long, confident review of a film, only to find out later the director cut an entirely different version for release. Same actors, same scenes, completely different meaning. That's how their analysis feels now. Embarrassing, incomplete, wrong. You didn't lie to them. You let them lie to themselves. You didn't pretend to be weaker than you were. You let them assume it. You didn't force a narrative. You allowed them to write one that served your timing. That's why the realization hurts so much, because there's no one to blame, no confrontation to stage, no villain to point at, just the quiet understanding that they played themselves. The best performances don't ask for applause. They wait for realization. Chosen one, if you feel a strange mix of pride and exhaustion right now, that's normal. Carrying awareness in a world addicted to noise is heavy. Performing intelligence instead of shouting it is lonely. Letting others feel ahead while you stay 10 steps forward requires discipline most people never develop. But look at where it brought you. Not exposed, not cornered, not defeated, positioned. They're still trying to decode what was real and what wasn't, still asking each other which moments mattered, still replaying scenes, hoping they missed something that will give them control back. They won't find it, because the performance is over. And the truth standing in front of them now isn't dramatic. It's calm, grounded, unapologetic, strong in a way that doesn't need validation. That's the kind of strength the universe respects, not loud domination, quiet mastery. They mistook theater for truth. They mistook observation for power. They mistook you for someone playing defense. And now they understand, too late, that the show was never for them. It was for positioning, and the final act hasn't even begun yet. Number 3. The leak they cheered for, the checkmate that ended them. If they think exposure means victory, it's because they've never seen a real end game. Let's crush the fantasy they're clinging to. The identity leak they're celebrating wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a slip. It wasn't you losing control. That story only exists because they need it to exist. It helps them sleep. It lets them pretend this wasn't deliberate. But here's the truth they're starting to feel in their chest. That leak was checkmate. Not exposure, not defeat. A final move executed so cleanly they mistook it for luck. They think they uncovered something. They think they forced the truth into the open. They're high-fiving, replaying the moment, telling themselves, "We got him, we finally got him." Let them celebrate. Every weak opponent celebrates too early. They confuse noise with victory and information with power. They don't realize the board only matters when the right piece moves, and when it does, the game ends quietly. Imagine this: a vault door that only opens once everything inside is already gone. They're cheering outside, thinking they broke in, not realizing the space is empty because the owner left hours ago. That's what this leak was. Not a break-in, a departure. You didn't lose the mask. You removed it. You didn't get caught. You concluded. They never noticed the timing, the way everything aligned just enough, the way the leak landed when you were already positioned elsewhere. That's why their excitement feels hollow, because nothing changed after it dropped. No leverage gained, no control seized, just confusion disguised as triumph. Real exposure creates chaos. Planned exposure creates silence. If you're wondering, Chosen One, why this feels calm instead of explosive, that's your answer. Chaos would mean you lost control. Calm means the move was finished before anyone realized it started. The curtain didn't fall because you were exposed. It fell because the performance was over, and now they're standing there, applauding an empty stage, slowly realizing the show ended on your terms. That's not accident, that's lethal precision. And once a checkmate is delivered, there's no next move. Number 4. You didn't disappear, you became untouchable. When people can't define you, they can't control you. That's why they panic. You didn't become a ghost by accident. You didn't fade because you were scared. You became formless because the situation demanded it. When the environment turns predatory, staying solid gets you targeted. So you adapted. You stopped being one thing they could name, label, or corner. They needed you to be simple. One version, one story, one fixed identity they could point at and say, "That's him." You denied them that comfort. You became too fluid for their categories, too layered for their shortcuts, too aware to stay still. A fixed shape is easy to hit. A shifting one survives. You gave them multiple versions of yourself, and that's where they really lost the plot. One version was calm and reasonable, another was distant and unreadable, another showed emotion, another withdrew completely. Each version felt real enough to chase, real enough to analyze, real enough to argue over. Imagine this. 4 mirrors in a dark room, each reflecting a different angle of the same person. They kept running toward the reflection they liked most, convinced it was the truth, never realizing the real figure was standing in the center, untouched. They exhausted themselves trying to figure out which version was authentic. They debated it, fought over it, built theories around it, and in doing so, they burned their energy, their focus, their unity. That wasn't luck. That was design. Confusion isn't chaos when you control the source. You might have wondered if this made you fake, if shifting like this meant you weren't being real. That's the wrong question. Authenticity isn't being one-dimensional, it's being intentional. Every version you showed was real enough, but none of them were complete. Completion is earned. Completion is revealed only when the environment is safe. Imagine water. Pour it into a glass, it becomes calm. Throw it into fire, it becomes steam. Freeze it, it becomes ice. Same substance, different response. No one calls water fake for adapting. That's what you did. They thought becoming a ghost meant weakness. They thought disappearing meant surrender. They didn't understand that you weren't gone. You were everywhere they couldn't grab. Now they're left with fragments, partial truths, incomplete images. And the more they try to piece you together, the more obvious it becomes they never had the whole picture. You didn't vanish, you evolved. And what can't be pinned down can't be taken down. Number 5. You spotted the cameras before they ever went live. The moment you realize you're being watched is the moment you stop being predictable. You saw it early, earlier than they think. The shift in tone, the way questions started sounding rehearsed, the curiosity that wasn't innocent anymore. Little tests slipped into conversations, comments designed to provoke, silence used as bait, traps wrapped in smiles. They assumed you wouldn't notice. Most people don't. Most people keep performing the same version of themselves even after the room changes. You didn't. You clocked the surveillance before it became official. Instead of running, you leaned in. That's what separates instinct from intelligence. You didn't panic. You didn't shut down. You adjusted the signal. You became the mystery they couldn't solve, not by hiding, but by refusing to stay consistent in ways that made them comfortable. Surveillance only works on patterns that don't evolve. You gave them contradictions on purpose, calm when they expected anger, openness when they expected distance, distance when they expected reassurance. Every time they thought they'd mapped you, the data stopped lining up. Charts broke. The equation never balanced. Imagine this: a radar system scanning for a single object, but the object keeps changing speed, shape, and direction without warning. The system doesn't detect danger. It malfunctions. That's what you did to their senses. They couldn't tell if you were reflecting them or resisting them. They couldn't tell which reactions were real and which were intentional. That uncertainty ate at them, because people who rely on control need clean signals. Noise terrifies them. When observers can't trust their own readings, they start doubting each other. You might have questioned yourself during this phase, wondered if you were overthinking, if you were imagining the tests. You weren't. Surveillance always starts softly. It hides behind interest. It pretends to care. You didn't confront it. You outgrew it. By the time they realized you were aware, it was too late. Awareness had already shifted your behavior beyond their reach. They weren't watching you anymore. They were chasing echoes. You overwhelmed their systems without raising alarms. No drama, no accusations, just evolution in real time. They thought they were monitoring you. They didn't realize you were rewriting the environment. And once the watcher loses clarity, the watched becomes free. Number 6. They turned you into a movement and still couldn't contain you. When people build communities around watching you, it's because they've lost control of their own lives. They didn't just watch you, they organized around you. That's the part they'll never admit out loud. Group chats turned into forums. Private discussions became entire ecosystems. They compared notes like analysts, shared theories like currency, stitched fragments together, hoping to trap a full picture. You weren't a person to them anymore. You were a problem to be solved. Some said you were dangerous. Some said you were broken. Some said you were manipulative, calculating, playing games. They argued over which version was real, not realizing the argument itself was proof of failure. When everyone disagrees about who you are, it means no one owns the truth. Imagine this: a crowd standing around a shadow on the wall, debating its shape, its size, its intent, while the person casting it already left the room. That's what those communities became. Noise without proximity. Obsession without access. They tried to triangulate your identity from pieces you allowed to exist. Old moments, half versions, outdated impressions. They treated fragments like evidence, never realizing fragments are only useful when the source is stable. Yours wasn't. They thought collaboration would bring clarity. It did the opposite. The more they talked, the more distorted the image became. One group convinced themselves you were spiraling, another swore you were hiding something massive, another insisted you were just lucky. The truth didn't scare them, the fact that they couldn't agree on it did. You might wonder why this escalated so far, why you became a topic instead of a footnote. Simple answer: unresolved power attracts fixation. When people sense someone operating beyond their reach, they don't disengage, they obsess. But here's the part that matters. All of them were right and all of them were wrong. You were dangerous to old systems. You were broken from versions of yourself that no longer existed. You were playing a game, just not the one they thought. The truth sat beyond their processing capacity. Too complex, too layered, too adaptive, and instead of admitting that, they built narratives to feel in control again. They didn't realize communities built on speculation collapse under reality, and when reality finally shows up, it doesn't argue, it replaces. You didn't need to correct them. You didn't need to clarify anything. They built the cage. You were never inside it. Number 7. You weaponized contradiction and they called it confusion. Only people who need control mistake flexibility for weakness. They swore you were inconsistent. That was their favorite word for you. Cold one day, warm the next. Distant, then unexpectedly present. Detached when they wanted access, compassionate when they expected indifference. They whispered it like a diagnosis, unstable, unclear, failing. They told themselves the mask was slipping. It wasn't. What they were witnessing wasn't confusion. It was range. It was adaptability. It was someone refusing to let identity harden into something exploitable. Predictability isn't integrity. It's vulnerability. Imagine this, a safe that opens the same way every time. The first few tries, it feels secure. Over time, anyone patient enough learns the pattern. That's how fixed personalities get cracked. You change the code every time. They couldn't decide which version of you to prepare for, and that terrified them. Humans crave stability in others because it makes manipulation easier. Once you broke that expectation, their tactics collapsed. You weren't contradicting yourself. You were responding accurately to changing conditions. Warmth when warmth disarmed. Distance when distance protected. Compassion when it shifted power. Silence when noise would have fed them. That's not inconsistency. That's situational awareness. A moving target isn't chaotic, it's alive. You might have wondered if this made you hard to understand. It did, on purpose. People who demand a single version of you aren't looking to know you, they're looking to manage you. They wanted a label, a role, a lane, something they could predict and prepare against. You denied them that luxury. Imagine trying to shadow someone whose reflection changes with the light. Every angle lies, every assumption fails. Eventually, the watcher questions their own eyesight. That's where they ended up. They thought growth should look linear. You proved it's responsive. They thought identity should be stable. You showed it's contextual. They thought predictability was maturity. You exposed it as a liability. Now they're left confused, exhausted, and second-guessing every conclusion they ever made about you, because none of their rules apply anymore. You didn't break character. You outgrew theirs. And when contradiction is intentional, it stops being chaos. It becomes strategy. Number 8. You flooded them with reality until they drowned. Hiding is amateur work. Overexposure is how professionals disappear. They thought deception meant concealment, locked doors, secrecy, silence. That's what small minds expect. You understood something far more dangerous. The real blueprint wasn't about hiding anything. It was about showing too much. You didn't starve them of truth. You overwhelmed them with it. Every emotion you showed was real, every reaction genuine, every version authentic in its own context. There was no fake persona, no manufactured mask, just fragments of a larger structure they never had permission to see in full. Too much truth, shown out of sequence, becomes indistinguishable from illusion. Imagine this. Someone hands you every page of a book, but shuffles the order and removes the cover. You read constantly, yet the story never makes sense. That's what you did. You gave them reality without cohesion. They assumed truth would simplify things. Instead, it complicated everything. One person saw your strength, another saw your softness, another saw restraint, another saw intensity. Each walked away convinced they understood you. None of them did. You never let the same person see all of you at once. Not because you were afraid, but because access is earned, not distributed. Full context is dangerous in the wrong hands. Transparency without boundaries is just self-destruction. They tried to compare notes, they tried to align experiences, but every time they did, the pieces didn't fit. One person's certainty cancelled another's. Confidence turned into argument. Argument turned into doubt. They thought the blueprint was missing. It wasn't. It was too complex for their need to categorize. You weren't hiding a single truth. You were operating on multiple layers at once. That's why their conclusions kept collapsing. You may have questioned whether this was too much, whether letting so many sides of you exist would dilute your power. It didn't. It multiplied it. Imagine light through a prism. Same source, different colors, none of them false. Together, overwhelming. That was the blueprint they never saw. They were looking for one door. You were an entire structure. And by the time they realized that, they were already lost inside it. Number 9. While they ran tests on you, you mapped their souls. Anyone asking questions to feel powerful forgets the answers point both ways. They really believed they were studying you. Every question felt clever to them. Every probe felt subtle. They thought curiosity was a weapon. They never stopped to consider what questions reveal about the person asking them. Each question showed you their fear. Each theory exposed their insecurity. Each assumption highlighted where their thinking broke down. They didn't gather data on you. They handed you a psychological fingerprint. People reveal their weaknesses faster when they think they're in control. You watched how they asked things, who rushed, who hesitated, who needed reassurance, who tried to dominate the conversation. That told you everything. You learned who needed certainty, who craved validation, who panicked in ambiguity, who folded when patterns stopped making sense. Imagine this, a general walking across a battlefield, watching how the enemy reacts to silence, to noise, to sudden movement. The reactions matter more than the terrain. You did the same thing. You didn't guess who they were. You observed who they became under pressure. They thought they were profiling you. You were building a manual. You became exactly what unsettled each one the most. Calm for the reactive, warm for the guarded, unreadable for the controlling, direct for the manipulative. You didn't fake it. You adjusted frequency. The fastest way to expose someone is to stop behaving how they expect. Some of them felt uneasy without knowing why. Others got frustrated. A few grew obsessed. That wasn't coincidence. That was psychological mirroring done with precision. You reflected their blind spots back at them without ever naming them. They couldn't compare notes because each of them experienced a different version of you, tailored not to deceive, but to reveal. By the time they realized something was off, it was too late. You weren't guessing their moves anymore. You anticipated them. You knew who would speak, who would leak, who would panic, who would betray. That's when the balance tipped. They thought they were analyzing you from a safe distance. They didn't realize you were standing inside their decision-making process. And once someone understands how you think under pressure, the outcome stops being uncertain. That wasn't luck. That was preparation. And preparation always wins. Number 10. You dropped the final move when they had nothing left. Timing isn't patience, it's knowing exactly when resistance collapses. You didn't rush, you didn't flinch, you waited until they were tired in ways rest couldn't fix. Tired of guessing, tired of chasing, tired of defending a story they built around opposing you. By the time you moved, their identity was welded to the idea that you were the problem. Walking away would have meant admitting they burned years on smoke. So they stayed, they doubled down, they convinced themselves they were close because admitting distance felt like defeat. That's when timing becomes lethal. People don't quit when they're wrong. They quit when quitting is cheaper than continuing. You waited until continuing cost them everything. Imagine this, someone digging for treasure long after the map stopped making sense. Hands bleeding, pride involved, crowd watching. The deeper they go, the harder it becomes to stop. That's where they were when you made your move. You gave them everything at the exact moment they thought they finally had something solid. Not breadcrumbs, not hints, clarity, enough truth to end debate, enough structure to collapse every theory at once. Truth delivered too early gets ignored. Truth delivered too late becomes mercy. This wasn't generosity, it was precision. You might have wondered if holding back meant fear. It didn't. It meant restraint. You let the universe do what it does best, exhaust false narratives until they can't stand on their own. By the time the reveal landed, they were already compromised. No energy to spin it, no credibility to reframe it, no exit that didn't look like surrender. Imagine flipping the lights on in a room after everyone already tripped over the furniture. The damage is done. Visibility just confirms it. You didn't need applause. You didn't need validation. You didn't need them to understand. You waited because waiting was the win. Endgames aren't loud. They're final. You moved when the game was already over. They just hadn't accepted it yet. That's perfect timing. Number 11. The reveal didn't solve the puzzle. It blew up the board. Truth doesn't always bring clarity. Sometimes it removes the illusion that clarity was ever possible. They expected the reveal to settle things. That's the mistake. They thought once the truth dropped, everything would line up neatly, questions answered, stories resolved, control restored. That's how simple minds imagine endings. That's not what happened. The truth didn't stabilize anything. It destabilized everything. Every answer cracked open two more questions. Every detail they clung to created new contradictions. Instead of relief, they felt vertigo. Instead of certainty, they felt exposed. Because the reveal didn't just show who you were. It showed them how wrong their entire framework had been. A weak reveal explains, a strong one dismantles. They finally saw you, and somehow you made less sense than before. That's when panic starts, when the solution doesn't simplify the equation, but proves the equation itself was flawed. Imagine this. Someone thinks they're solving a maze, only to realize the walls move when they touch them. The map becomes useless. Direction disappears. That's what the reveal did. It didn't end the mystery. It proved the mystery was never the point. You didn't reveal a single identity. You revealed that identity itself is a construct. You showed them that personality can be layered, contextual, adaptive. That truth can exist in multiple states without cancelling itself out. That someone can be real without being reducible. They weren't afraid of who you were. They were afraid of what you proved. Because once they see that identity isn't fixed, their entire method of control collapses. Labels stop working. Narratives lose power. Profiling fails. You didn't just escape their system. You exposed its limitations. They're asking now, quietly, the most dangerous question of all. If you built yourself this way, who else could? That's the real damage. You didn't step out of the maze. You revealed you designed it. And when people realize they were playing inside someone else's architecture, they don't feel enlightened, they feel small. That's what the reveal actually did. Number 12. They showed up with checkers. You built the chessboard. You can't outplay someone when you don't even know what game you're in. They thought they were exposing a fraud. That was their opening mistake. They came in loud, confident, convinced this was simple. Catch the lie, reveal the mask, point, laugh, move on. That's how checkers works. Flatboard, limited moves. Everyone sees everything. They never considered strategy. What they uncovered wasn't weakness, it was architecture. They didn't find a victim scrambling to survive. They ran straight into a mind that had already mapped the end before the beginning even looked interesting. A strategist doesn't react to pressure. They design where pressure lands. They prepared for tears, apologies, collapse. They prepared for someone cornered. Instead, they discovered someone who had already accounted for every outcome, including their confidence. Especially their confidence. Imagine this, someone celebrating because they flipped a single piece, not realizing the board itself was tilted hours ago. Every move they made felt like progress, but it only advanced the position you wanted them in. That's the part they can't swallow. They weren't closing in. They were being spaced out. Every step they took put them further behind. Every gotcha moment was already priced into the plan. That's why nothing they uncovered gave them leverage. It only confirmed timing. People who play checkers think forward moves mean control. You were 3 steps ahead before the game even officially started. While they were asking what you were doing, you were deciding when they would notice. That difference is everything. Now they see the smile. The one that never changed. The one they misread as nervous, as submissive, as polite fear. It wasn't. It was awareness. It was the smile of someone watching an opponent burn energy on the wrong board, the smile of someone who already knew how this would end and didn't need to rush it. They thought surrender looks quiet. They didn't know control does too. And now, standing there with the pieces scattered, they finally understand something too late to matter. They weren't playing the same game. Number 13. The mask came off, and now they're terrified of what's next. Endings allowed. Education is quiet, slow, and humiliating. They think this is the finale. That's comforting for them, so let them believe it for a moment. The mask is off, yes, but what's underneath didn't simplify anything. It made everything harder to define, harder to control, harder to explain away. This isn't the end of their investigation. It's the moment they realize the investigation failed. They finally understand something that wrecks their confidence at the core. They were never the hunters. Not once. Not even close. They didn't chase you. They didn't corner you. They didn't expose you. They were the data. The most painful lesson is realizing you were being studied the whole time. Every reaction they had, every theory they built, every argument they fought over, all of it fed the same system. While they thought they were gathering information, they were generating it. Stress responses, ego tells, fear patterns, loyalty fractures. Imagine this, someone thinking they're taking a test, only to realize later they were part of the experiment. The results weren't about the questions, they were about them. That's the moment they're in now. The real checkmate was never about what you revealed. It wasn't your identity. It wasn't the truth they think they uncovered. That was just the surface layer, a distraction from the deeper impact. Revelation is easy. Self-confrontation is lethal. What they're forced to face now is themselves, their obsession, their arrogance, their need to control what they don't understand, their willingness to rewrite reality just to protect their pride. That's why this doesn't feel finished, because nothing has been resolved for them. The story didn't close, it turned inward. They're left with mirrors instead of answers, silence instead of victory, doubt instead of certainty. You moved on the moment the mask came off. They stayed behind, staring at what it says about them. This isn't your ending, it's their education. And lessons like this don't fade. They follow people for life.